Planning your next post-COVID vacation? Be prepared with the help and expert advice of the Travel Guys.
Hello and welcome to The Travel Guys, your weekly guide to what's happening and what's new in the wonderful world of travel. Today I'm delighted to have with my guest Vanessa Marsh, the chair of the Tourism Advisory Board in Niue Island, one of my favourite places in the world. Welcome, Ness. Great to have you here.
Whakalafolia atu, Mike. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. It's great that you're in town at the moment. Ness, a little bit of background about yourself. How long have you been involved in tourism and how did it all get started for you?
I think for me, our exposure to the tourism industry came from when my dad started up his very first fishing charter, probably back in the early 90s. So since then we've always been accustomed to having moments waiting down on the wharf, waiting for him to come home, seeing what the fish looked like, seeing how surprised or how happy the anglers were. And so I think it sort of became a natural progression. I studied tourism at university. That's the University of the South Pacific in Fiji. I came back to Niue after completing studies and was able to get a job with the tourism office. So I've sort of just worked my way through. I finished with the tourism office, took a while to think about what we could do next, and we set up a tourism business. So we now offer a range of tourism products on the island, from accommodation to land-based tours and a lot of marine-based activities.
Locate Niue on the map.
So Niue is a very small Pacific island. It's located in the Polynesian Triangle between Samoa, Tonga and the Cook Islands. We are a relatively easy destination to get to. It's a direct flight from New Zealand, just under 3 hours, and you could have a complete change in weather and feel from busy Auckland life to the laid-back style of Niue.
Viewers, I've got to profess a vested interest. I've been lucky enough to work with Niue Tourism for the last few years, and it's got a very special place in my heart. So if I start talking over the top of Vanessa, you'll understand why. I'll try not to do it, Ness.
That's okay.
Okay, Ness, a bit the history of the island. I think it's fascinating. Can you just run that too, please?
So Niue is still relatively young compared to some of the other Pacific islands. A lot of our history dates back to when the first voyaging canoes arrived in Niue, and that's how the origin of Niueans came about. So 3 canoes, one from Tonga, Samoa and Puka Puka, and that's how the Niuean culture and identity has evolved. Some of the key things that sort of pop out in our history is 1774, when Captain Cook attempted 3 times to land. So we have this beautiful sea track on Niue. It's called Opahi, and that's where Captain Cook made his last attempt. And we tend to say he was scared off by some of our local boys who were down there. And what they had done was they had painted their body in charcoal and taken the dye from the red banana plant, the fusi hula hula. And so they're down there jumping up and down, dressed and looking very ferocious. So he must have gotten scared off. And so after that, he named Niue Savage Island. Oh,
that's right, Savage Island. He never set foot on the island.
Didn't set foot on the island.
Now, the language and culture. The language is very similar to New Zealand Maori, correct?
It has some similarities. It's quite a unique language. It is an endangered language. It's actually listed by the UN as an endangered language. There are efforts to try and encourage the use of Wangahau Niue, but it's a beautiful language once you get to use it.
Yeah. Coming to some of the show days and listen to it spoken.
Yes, the way it's spoken and the way it's used in both formal and informal.
A little bit about the island itself. It's a raised coral atoll, and for you, there is a misnomer out there, and I've heard it many times of people saying, "Oh, isn't that a place where there's no beaches, you can't swim?" It's unique in the extent that there is a ledge of coral, ancient coral, and volcanic rock around the island, so that there are no big white sandy beaches one associates with the South Pacific. But what it has got is some of the most beautiful little tiny coves, chasms, just dotted around the island, and that's what I found really fascinating. It's got some beautiful swimming spots and snorkeling spots.
It's quite a unique island as well. A lot of the geological makeup of the island that you see above the water is actually replicated underneath as well. So if you're a scuba diver or if you're a snorkeler, you'll be able to explore some of the coves as well underwater, and it's the same as above the water as well. A small population, 1,700 people, and they predominantly still live off the land and the sea. So Niue has a very thin layer of topsoil, and the way it has evolved, we do have geologists who come up to the island quite interested in trying to understand more about the makeup of the island. So towards the centre of the island you can often come across fossilised remnants of shells and all sorts of things there.
It's extraordinary actually. To walk through the Huvalu forest, which is beautiful and lush and green, but seeing these extraordinary trees that's clinging on to what seems to be bare rock, that doesn't seem to be any topsoil around.
Yes.
It's like our pahutakawas can do on the coast here. It's very similar, but the whole forest is like that.
So that's one thing Niue does, is make its people and its land resilient.
There certainly are that. So we come to Niue. We can talk about who would come to Niue, who would like to go to Niue. I have my own ideas, but I'd love to hear your thoughts as to what sort of person would love to come to Niue and what would they get when they get there.
I think we should talk about who might not like Niue.
Yes, good point.
Yeah. So Niue is not the type of place, if you want to experience, you know, the big luxury shopping malls or the hustle and bustle of traffic and nightclubs and what have you. Niue will appeal to a broad range of travellers, and that's what we like to call them, travellers.
Yeah.
They come from all walks of life. They could be young families, they could be solo travellers, they could be a couple, it could be a mature couple who's just happily enjoying their time in retirement. I think Niue is a beautiful place that can offer something for everyone, but Niue is the type of place that if you want to reconnect with yourself, reconnect with nature, just take a step back to just disconnect to reconnect, I suppose.
Yes.
And it's also a place, if you want a little bit of adventure, there's plenty to do that can inspire that as well.
That's my thoughts too. What I really love about Niue, and I've said this to people many times, it's the most untouristified, if I can use it, make that word up, place they can go to, and it's got so much to offer. There's heaps of activities to be done, but as you say, you can still chill. I mean, yes, there's some beautiful spots to just lay back, but what I like about Niue too is that it's, well, firstly I should say that it is quite large. Viewers will be surprised to know, whilst there's only 1,700 people, the island itself is nearly 4 times the size of Rarotonga.
You can still get lost on
you. I've done so myself. But it's the sort of place that you get up in the morning, pack your togs, pack your swimming gear, your sun cream lotion, maybe get a bite of something for lunch, get in your rental car. There is no public transport, so you do need to rent a car, but they're very reasonably priced, and off you go. And every few hundred metres you'll sign saying sea cave, coves, trek.
That reminds me of something that we just spoke about today.
Yes.
From Susie.
Yes.
3 words to describe Niue.
Yep.
Caves. Coves, caves and cars.
That's it. Coves, chasms and cars.
Yes.
That's it, exactly.
Yeah.
Because you do need a car, but you'll find it literally every few hundred metres you'll find a spot. You'll go down and you'll find this gorgeous little bay, crystal clear to water, and the water clarity, because
That's
there's
amazing.
no runoff, is up to 80 metres visibility.
Yep.
And
On a bad day.
On a good day. On a bad day.
On a bad day.
Say that to a diver and they'll roll their eyes, 80 metres of is. So you found your little spot, you go for a snorkel, you go for a paddle, and it's just to die for. So the next day you think, right, we're going to go back there. And if somebody's there, it's like, what?
What are you doing here? But that's okay. That's okay. You just drive on to the next one, because there's a few of them around.
We've all got
So
our
you can
favourites.
always find a little place of Niue that you can make your own.
Your own, exactly. And that's what makes it very special. So you can swim. Snorkeling, as I said, is wonderful. The fishing is outstanding, because the drop-off is literally just a couple of hundred metres, if that, offshore.
That's right.
And so the great pelagic species come past. And so what am we fishing for? What are you going to catch?
It depends on the season as well. But throughout the year, you could have an opportunity to fish for wahoo. They're like the speedsters of the ocean. You've got various tuna species that you can catch, so from yellowfin tuna, dogtooth tuna. The main method of fishing in Niue is trolling. So they do have what we call FADs, fish aggregating devices, so they help with the fishing opportunity as well. Often you will have some of the local boys out in the traditional waka, so that's the traditional fishing canoe, and it's amazing just to watch them out there fishing, and when they come home with a huge tuna or a sailfish, it's quite the event for the waka boys and the family. But you could always mix it up as well, and that's We have a range of accredited fishing charter operators. They can offer light game fishing, spear fishing, free diving as well. So there's a nice mix in there.
I should stress too that the fishing is all in small boats. There's maximum 3 or 4 boats generally. So it's not like some of these big, where you've got 12, 15 people, you get your hour on the chair and an hour off.
And the thing too is you don't need to travel like 2 or 3 hours before you hit the fishing grounds.
Exactly.
You're literally 100 meters from leaving the shore and always within sight of the island, and you're out fishing in nice big deep water.
So we've fished and we've dived and we've snorkeled and we've swum, and of course one of the most magical things about Niue is from July to October it's the whale season. And the humpback whales come, and they come literally within 100 metres of shore. And I've stayed at the resort, we'll talk about accommodation in a moment, but staying at the Matavai Resort on the cliff face, it's a most stunning location, and you hear the bell, if you're in your room, you hear the bell ring, go out on the deck because they'll be there right in front of you. And so just tell us a little bit about the whales.
Oh my gosh, so Niue is a whale sanctuary. So any marine mammal that comes through Niue's waters, whether it's a beluga whale or a humpback whale, is protected. So the humpback whales are endangered. They come through Niue's waters to rest and to calve.
Sorry, they actually carve in the bay, do
yes.
they? Oh wow.
Yes, we do. We do have Niuean whales that are born in Niue.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So they're quite special, and there's a conservation group called Omatofua that also does a lot of work around creating awareness about the whales and how they are being impacted. They also do a lot of research, like collecting scientific data that can help understand more about the whale's behaviour. We also are able to offer whale watching experiences on Niue. So it's very well regulated. The operators are licensed. They undergo training as to how you can manoeuvre your boats and interact with the whales. So it is a safe experience, but also a very memorable one.
You can swim with the whales.
You can swim.
Only 4 places in the world, I understand.
That's right,
yeah.
yes. The groups are small. You do have to have a guide with you in the water, but the key message there is also about understanding the importance of the whale and how culturally connected they are to Niueans.
Yep.
And you don't need to get in the water with them.
No,
I mean, as a local, you sort of drive past and you look out to the sea and, oh, there's a whale blow, just carry on. So little things like that we seem to take for granted actually make for a really special experience.
Absolutely.
You could be sipping coffee at Waialama Cafe or Crazy Onga Cafe and look out to the ocean and there goes the whales.
Yeah. Actually, a friend of mine had a most extraordinary experience, which he was out fishing once, and as they were coming into to the jetty, the skipper said, "Oh, there's some whales just over there. I'll stop the boat," because they can't go within 200 metres of the whales. He said, "Just jump in the water. The whales may, if you're lucky, come past." And my friend dropped his mask and was floundering around, trying to get his mask back on, trying to clean it, and was hanging onto the side of the boat, and he felt a bump, and the young humpback had come and right up to him and gently bumped him in his back.
Oh, wow.
It was an experience, he said it was the most life-changing experience.
Yes.
He said, there I'm scratching the nose of a 3 or 4 metre baby humpback that had just come up for a look.
Yeah, so the little calves are quite inquisitive. They're also a little bit playful, but we reserve them the greatest level of protection and respect, because they have to make this hard journey down to the Antarctic, which is home for them. So we try and make sure that they have the time they need to spend with the mum, to be able to learn the behaviour it needs to be able to survive that journey. But they're so delightful to watch. Just sitting down off Sir Robert's Wharf and seeing them play, it's very special. Yeah.
So we also say to people, if you're wanting to go out and see the whales, so the whales, we can't dial them, we can't bring them up and say the plane's landing, come out and do your thing. But there is a resident pod of spinner dolphins that are fantastic, and they just seem to cruise past the front of the bay just about every day. And people like BJ can take, or people can take them out on the rubber ducky. Yes, and you can hang on the side of the rubber ducky, and they take you into the pod, and suddenly you've got 20 or 30 dolphins swimming around you. And one friend of mine, she had the most extraordinary experience of playing with a dolphin. There was a big leaf there, and just by fun, she put the leaf on her head and then let it go, and the dolphin came and grabbed it and then pushed it in front of her, and then the dolphin let the leaf go.
They are very playful. We call that the leaf game. So,
I thought it was a one-off. I'll have to tell her that. Everybody does it.
Oh, not everybody. It's usually, you know, again, it's up to how the animal wants to interact. So if they're in a playful mood, that's great. If they come across a leaf that they can play with, then you're even more lucky to be able to have that experience. We also encourage people to sing in the water.
Really?
seems to engage with the dolphins as well. So just belt out your tunes.
I'll try that next time I'm there.
Maybe.
I'll probably scare them away, that's the thing. So we've snorkeled, we've swum, we've gone fishing, we've had the pleasure of going with the whales. I would also say if people aren't really, they don't want to get so physically active, there's some very gentle walks on the island, there's some beautiful spots, but it's a great place to relax. It also got some fantastic accommodation options as well. There's only the one big resort, which is the Matavai, which is at 70 rooms. I'm just trying to remember
Yeah,
off the top of my
just
head.
about, with a conference facility and
Yep.
centre. Yeah.
But there's many smaller places around the island, 2,
Yes.
3 and 4 rooms, and some of them are outstandingly good. There's some quite basic rustic ones there.
Yep.
But that's what I love about Niue. It caters to everybody. And
We have a
people-
nice range.
Yeah, I was chatting to a chap on a plane going up there, and he was, it was his 5th visit to Niue, and he loved it. And I said, where is he staying? And he told me, and it would be probably the most basic accommodation on the island. And I didn't exactly flinch, but I questioned it. And he just smiled. He said, no, I fish and I dive and I snorkel every day. So every penny I take up, I just want a bed for the night.
Yes.
And I thought, well, that's fine. You've got the options all available there.
Yeah.
So the other thing I find really interesting is that you've got a great range. For such a small population, there's a fantastic range of dining options.
Yes.
Can you give us some examples?
Oh, we've got some come with their own interesting stories as to how they became established, but with a small sort of business economy or a business environment, you can get a nice range of dining options. So you've got Kaika, which is perhaps rated one of the top sushi restaurants outside of Japan. You've got Veolama Cafe. That
I have to interrupt you there. We have to talk about Kaika, just the fact that this
you'll
is...
reserve space for Kaika.
Yeah, we do, because of the fact, picture the scene. This is an extraordinary new Jewish guy called Avi, comes from a legal background, comes to Niue, marries the Niuean Guild and starts a Japanese restaurant. I mean, why wouldn't she? I mean, what a story that is to tell.
And
it's
selling
just-
Mediterranean chicken.
And yes, exactly. And he gets Japanese guest chefs out from Japan every year, and the food is just outstanding.
Yes.
Total unique. Yeah, carry on. I interrupted you.
No, not at all. So there's lots of different cafes that you can sit down. A lot of them have sea views as well, so it's a nice way to just enjoy the day as well. You can get espresso coffee. You can get a nice range of freshly made cafe meals. And then you should reserve some time to try out some of the local island buffets.
Yep.
So they only happen maybe once or twice a week during our busy period, but they are a lovely experience. That's where you get to try some of the local food, our popular dish such as takihi and our raw fish, ota.
Yep.
So lots of delicacies to try.
And there, of course, your famous unga,
Yes.
and the coconut crabs. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Yes, so they are actually protected. You cannot export coconut crab. So we sort of say if you'd like to taste it, you'll have to come to Niue to do so. So there are ways that we conserve our resources. So even though they can be eaten, but they're also quite interesting with their habitat and their
Extraordinary.
behaviour.
I've never seen
They
them.
almost look prehistoric.
They are this big. And I remember Willie took us out for a night looking for unga, and which is Willie's Wasseray Cafe, which we'll talk about in a moment. But with my grandson, we went and it's pitch dark, and we're stumbling over rocks, and Willie's got the torch, and he suddenly, stop, look, just look in front of you. I can't see a thing, Willie, look. And honestly, I swear, not even a metre away was this crab,
Yes.
like this big, just hanging onto the rocks.
And
It was a
that's
hair-raising experience.
Yeah, it's
literally.
really nice because we do have some land-based tours which give you a little bit more insight into how Niueans actually work with the land. So you can get an opportunity to go out and lay the coconut baits to get the coconut crab. Then you can go back a couple of evenings later and see if you find any coconuts that are, find coconut crabs that are the right size to be taken. There's some amazing walks that you can do with Jack with Ebony's forest tour.
Yes.
Learning about Huvalu forest, learning about the ebony carving that he specialises in.
Yes.
You've got Misa and his cultural tour as well, which is also amazing and gives you a really deeper understanding of what Niue is about. Waka tours, so a nice range as well.
Yeah.
Plantation tours, how to plant a taro.
And you can play golf. It's an
Play golf.
interesting 9-hole golf course. I did laugh at the fact that one of the holes, it's like a dog leg round the clubhouse, and
Yes.
so the shortcuts over the clubhouse. So one wall is completely full of dents.
That's right. So it might look small, being only 9 holes, but it's a challenging course.
And it is the social event Saturday afternoon after
Yes.
golf.
And then we've got the Lawn Bowls Club right
Correct.
next door.
Yep.
So they're quite busy too on a Saturday.
And one of the best mini golf courses I've ever played. just spectacular down on the
Vailama Cafe,
Yeah.
yes.
I mentioned before, viewers, is Willie's Washaway Cafe. It's one of my favourite spots in the South Pacific, and it's just a nice little story of Willie Santelli, who went back home, decided to start a restaurant, a cafe, because he realised there were so few places to eat on a Sunday. Slight problem, he didn't know how to cook, which is usually fairly important if you're going to start a cafe. So when Willie started, it was purely, he only wanted to work Sundays as well. So every Sunday at 11 o'clock, it was 11 to 11, he'd bring the sign out saying, menu today, fish focaccia $10, burger $10. And it stayed like that for probably 10 years. And now it's expanded out, and one can get an excellent pizza and chips, but it's the most unique. It's an honesty bar system. So you wander in there, you just grab yourself a beer, grab a glass of wine, pour it yourself, and you just tear a piece of paper off the pads on the wall, and you write down what you pay what you have written down. So it's a completely honest system.
Yeah.
I think it'll last about a minute and a half in Auckland, because probably not just the beer had gone, but the till would have gone as well. But it's really unique, and it's a very special. To me, it indicates what's special about Niue, and it is such a different place from another quick one too, Ness, that really makes me smile. I think I mentioned to Susie, who works with me. She went to the market, which is lovely. It's a tiny little market. It's Wednesdays and Saturdays.
We now do Tuesdays and Friday mornings, and then there's a market on Wednesday, another on Saturday, and then we have the organic night market.
And that's new to me. I haven't seen that. I'd love to see that. Well, Susie was there, and she ended up chatting away to these lovely ladies for about a half an hour, talking about kids and all the rest of it and so on. And then she said, because they haven't bought anything yet, and she asked to get some fruit, and the lady just pushed them across and said, "No, you're a nice person. You just take them. Just take them."
Those are really special
it doesn't
interactions.
Happen.
Yeah, if you take the time to spend with our local community, then you get a really good understanding of what we're like.
Well, obviously being hit hard by COVID, we need to point out, just briefly, what are the plans or hopes that for reopening this? And of course, I'm not going to hold this to you, but just what do you think the plans will be?
Those discussions are being taken place at a government level. It's between New Zealand government and Niue government and their officials. They want to make the right choice and a safe choice as to when the borders can be opened. There's a lot of things that they are preparing on the ground to be able to do that, but some months that are being discussed could potentially be October. So I guess we could just wait and see. But like you mentioned, don't hold me to that.
I won't hold you to that. I will, but I won't promise. No, I think that I've spoken to a number of people who have said that even if they've never been to Niue, the concept of what Niue seems to offer, quiet, peace and quiet. You can self-isolate there. You can distance yourself if you want to. It seems to appeal to a lot of people, and I think it will be very popular. But then again, even if we go back to the 2 flights a week, that's about 220 or 230 people on the island at any one time. And for an island 4 times the size of Rarotonga, it doesn't get that busy. You're not going to find yourself run off your feet at all. We should mention the cost of getting to Niue, and there's no point in us saying this is an airfare because it'll change every day.
Yes.
But just in broad terms, from my experience, to come and stay for a week in Niue, outside of the high season, which is the July to October window, and staying on one of the smaller properties, you'd be looking at around about per person for return airfares and 7 nights accommodation, around about between $800 and $1,000, maybe $1,200, and then in the high season going up to $1,200 to $1,400. And to stay at the Matavai, the 4-star resort, return airfares, 7 nights accommodation, maybe starting at around about $1,200, going up to about $1,600, $1,700. Yes. And sometimes some of the operators do throw in a rental car for that as well, which makes it great value. Stressing again, there's no public transport.
Yes.
You do need a rental car. They're reasonably priced though. I think mostly, from my experience, between say $35 to $55 a day, and they're good standard as well. And another thing too, which we should mention is, I think I know the answers to this, but I'll talk to you about it as well. Is we're competing with so many destinations with such bigger budgets than what Niue's got to offer. What do you think sets Niue aside in terms of we're competing with the big boys? We haven't got those massive budgets, but we've got something special to offer. How do you see that when we're trying to compete with the others?
Oh, I think that's a challenging question.
That's why I asked you.
Oh gosh. So I think Niue has that little point of difference where you can have a really intimate connection to the island, to the people. You won't be able to get lost in the hustle and bustle of whatever's happening. And each Pacific Island country has a really unique point of difference. So I'm not sure if you could call it competing, but it's more like complementary in terms of what they can offer. And it's great if Niue can be your first destination in the South Pacific. That might spoil you. You might not need to go to the others. But yeah.
No, I think that's it well is different. And I do know a lot of people who have, quote, been to the other provinces or done the South Pacific. They want to go to Niue because it's different, it's because it's new. As somebody once said to me, this is the line I do love, Ness, somebody once said to me, Niue is not for everybody, and thank goodness for that.
That's well said. I mean, Niue has been making waves as well in terms of trying to focus on some of its sustainable activities. It got accredited as a dark sky sanctuary, and it's the only country in the world to have achieved that.
That's an amazing achievement. I should have mentioned that earlier. So
That's
only
right.
country in the world.
Yes, to have that status. There are places here in New Zealand that have dark sky accreditation, but Niue sort of
The only country.
gone the extra mile for that.
I know how long I'd stay.
How long would you stay, Mike?
As long as I possibly could.
Yeah.
But realistically, people have said to me, okay, there's 2 flights a week, great. Go up there for 3 days, that'll do, won't it? No. I strongly urge people to stay a minimum of a week. In fact, as Vanessa and I were talking before we came to air, that when the second flight started, everyone thought we'll get lots of short stays, but no, it ended up a lot of 10-day stays and 14-day stays.
Everyone started to stay longer.
Yeah, so I do suggest if you're going to Niue, do stay a week, because your first day, you're not going to be landing till midday, 1 o'clock. You don't get to your hotel till 2 or so on. That day is gone, and when you fly out, you're leaving at about midday. So it only gives you 5 days, and believe me, there's a lot to be done within that 5 days.
But that's okay. You can always come back and do more.
Correct. Okay. Well, Ness, it's been so great to have you. It's great to have you in Auckland, and you've reignited my passion for the place, and let's hope that we can open those doors in October.
Great. Well, thank you for having me, Mike, and we look forward to when borders open and we can have our travellers back.
Look forward to having a beer with you at the washroom.
Yes.
Thanks, Ness.
Thank you.
Thank you.